Welcome back to this section. We will be talking about elements of personality. What are the things that form your personality? What are the things that contribute to your personality? What are the things that shape up your personality? So the first one we're going to talk about is temperament. Now, what is your temperament? Your temperament is the inborn part of your personality, your natural emotional expressions and energy patterns. It's how you're wired from birth. It's how you like to show up in the world. Are you sanguine? Are you hyper? Are you energetic? Are you calm? Are you steady? Are you slow? Are you relaxed? Are you forceful? Are you strict? Are you driven? It shows up early in life, as early as infancy, and it forms the foundation of your personality. The temperament theory is an ancient framework that helps us understand the emotional and behavioral tendencies we're born with, what drives us, how we relate, and how we naturally respond to life. While no one is 100% one type, most people have a dominant and possibly a secondary temperament. Sometimes there are babies, and even at a very young age, we have babies that are very calm, very quiet, very organized. They don't like pooing on themselves, and even when they have stained their diapers, they'll cry so much just to get changed. And there is the other baby that is very loud and giggly and laughing and very loud basically, and it's just like crawling all over the place. Even when they have pooped on themselves, they cannot be bothered. They just want to play, they just want to laugh out loud and be everywhere. And sometimes when you have a group of kids, you realize that naturally somebody takes up the leadership role, somebody is more quiet and steady and they cannot be bothered. These are all indications of temperaments of children or temperaments of people from a very tender age. And if you're a parent or if you're a mother, it's important to look out for these things at the very early age so that you're able to steer the children in the way that they should go. Okay. The second element of your personality are your traits. Your traits are consistent patterns in how you think, feel, and act over time. They are shaped both by temperament and experience. Now, key things to note about your traits. The traits are more defined than temperament. They influence personality types. They can change slightly over time, but are mostly stable. Now, your traits are your most dominant patterns, okay? So your most dominant patterns, that is, are you generally a friendly person? Are you generally a loud person? Are you generally an organized person? Are you generally introverted? Do you like to be by yourself? Do you like to be with other people? So your temperament could have a bearing on your traits. Your traits are deeply influenced by your temperament. And so you would realize that there are people, so typical example, there was a time that there was an incident, at church, and then a friend of mine was saying that, oh, and Louis did this and this and this and that. And then a friend of mine said, Louis would never do that, because she's familiar with my traits. She knows the most dominant patterns that I display, and she knows that is a very unusual thing about this person. So you see that there are people that are usually very easygoing, very focused, right? The difference between a temperament and a trait is that the temperament is innate, right? The trait is consistently how you show up. So how you think, how you feel, and how you act over time. It is possible for certain traits to change. I used to be extremely spontaneous. When I say extremely spontaneous, I mean extremely spontaneous. That was a trait that existed about me then. But now I have evolved, and so I will not exactly say that I am as spontaneous as I used to be. Now, I am sanguine in my temperament, and spontaneity is something that is common with sanguines. But that trait of spontaneity is still there, it's just not as pronounced. So most of the people that probably know me in the last 5 to 8 years may not necessarily take me for somebody who is very spontaneous. However, somebody that knew me before then will not believe that I am not spontaneous, because back then that was a trait that was very strong in my personality, and now it's no longer a dominant trait in my personality. I don't know if that makes sense, right? So that's how the traits show up. So you can have Typical example, you can have a trait of somebody who's very reliable. You have a friend who's very reliable, and then for some reason, maybe they get disappointed too many times, or they find their relationship with this person no longer working for them, and so they change, they make an adjustment, they switch, right? Because of some kind of experience. And you need to understand that your traits are influenced both by your temperament and by your experience. And so sometimes you may have certain experiences that make you realize that certain traits that you have are not serving you, and so you change your traits. It doesn't necessarily mean that your temperament has changed. It just means that that particular trait of, let's say, faithfulness that you were displaying in your friendship or in your relationship has now changed, because you realize that the people that you're in the relationship with, are no longer deserving of that trait, right? So that's possible. That's possible to happen to you. The third element of your personality, which I absolutely love, and I would love for you to at the end of this session, I will have a series of questions that you can go through to help you discover some of these things about yourself. But this particularly is something that I love about your personality, and which is your strengths. Now, what are your strengths? Your strengths are your natural or learned abilities or qualities that you do well, and you often enjoy using them. So your strengths are basically things that you're good at. Gifts, talents, whether you were born with them or whether you learned them, as long as they are things that you do well, those are your strengths. So what are things that you're great at? What are things that you thrive in? They could be talents, they could be character traits or skills that make you effective, right? Traits are generally positive and empowering. They can be developed and sharpened. They can give insight into where you thrive naturally. So your strengths can be that you are a very confidential person, you're a very secretive person. It could be a strength. Your strengths could be that you sing well, that you are a very great sports person, that you're very athletic. It could be that you are a great people's person. It could be a strength. Those things could be strengths for you. And somebody who has empathy and easily understands people, that could also be a strength. Now, you can also have a strength of, being very analytical in your thinking, or being a problem solver. All of these things are strengths, and you need to, as a person, know what your strengths are. These are things that are going to help you to thrive. These are things that are going to give you an upper hand. These are things that are going to give you an advantage, right? And so your strengths are important. And once we get to the end of the session, I want you to deeply answer the questions so that you will understand what your strengths are, or you begin to identify what your strengths are and how you can use them to serve you. The fourth element of your personality is character. Now, character is the moral and ethical side of personality. It is who you are when no one is watching. It is very, very important. This is the part of you that is almost, I would say, it is the lens through which all the other traits of your personality shine forth. The reason why I say that is this: your character is shaped by your values, your choices, and integrity. Your character is your inner compass. It is how you decide to use the strengths that you have. It is how you decide to use the traits that you have. It is how you decide to navigate your temperament of, let's say, being a choleric or being sanguine or being any of those things. It guides your actions and reflects your core. It is built over time through decisions. It reflects your moral maturity and trustworthiness. It is tied to integrity, kindness, honesty, humility, etc. The thing about your character is that it is built. Character is not something you're born with. It is something that is built. And so you need to spend the time to decide, what kind of a person do I want to be? Do I want to be a person with a shrewd character, or I want to be a person with a good character? Do I want to be a person of integrity? Do I want to be a person of high moral value or high value? Do I want to be a high value woman? It's part of your character. You see, when we say that, okay, because I'm a high value woman, I don't do this and that and that, That is a value system. That is what builds your character. Now, your character is how you are showing up as a result of your values, as a result of your inner compass. So what is it within you that is making you do the things that you do? Now, here is why it makes, all the difference. We have two people that are sanguine. Sanguines are generally very loud, very talkative. They like to meet with strangers. They're the life of the party. They don't have any kind of inhibitions, very spontaneous, very energetic, and all of that. Now, you can have a sanguine that has a weak moral compass, and because they talk a lot, they will end up lying a lot, right? And then you will have another sanguine that has a strong moral compass, and because they know they talk a lot and have the tendency to lie, they rather set up a lot more boundaries. So they decide, who am I going to talk to? What am I going to talk about? How do I end a conversation if I think it's going into a place that is going to make me compromise my values? These are two people that have the same temperament, but because of the difference in character, they show up differently, right? You can have two cholerics. Cholerics are very driven, very authoritative. They are very sharp-tongued because they are very authoritative, and they are driven, they are leaders, they are passionate about work and task and all of that. They are very task-oriented. They are not very people-oriented, and because they are very task-oriented, they are only thinking about achieving the goal. They are high achievers, almost overachievers, and they are bent on achieving the goal, right? Now, you can have two cholerics, one with a weak character and one with a strong character. Now, the choleric with the weak character will default to a lot of the weaknesses of the choleric, right? And the choleric with a stronger character or stronger value system will defer to the stronger traits of the choleric. However, this is what I mean by that. Because a choleric is naturally an achiever or wanting to achieve and bent on doing things, getting their results and everything, one with a weak character does not mind stepping on the toes of anybody, or they don't care who they step over to get to where they have to get to, right? But then there is one that has a strong character that says, I cannot just step over people to get to where I want to go to. So they begin to think about innovative and creative ways to circumvent the challenges they face with people, and to have strong conversations with people, but not to abuse people. They're able to communicate effectively, not just telling people their mind and saying that they are honest and they are blunt and blah blah blah. They find a way to effectively communicate because they have a strong character. Does that make sense? So your character is the vehicle through which all the other elements of your personality will come to play. It is the lens, it is the vehicle, it is a thing that determines how all the other elements of your personality will come to play. So it's very, very important to build your character. And I would say that as a good woman, it's important to build your character based on the word of God, because the word of God is sure, it does not change. And once your character is built on the strength of the word of God, you are a very strong, settled person, and you don't change, with the changing tides of the world, and you don't become this kind of person because the world says so, or you don't become that type of person because the world becomes so. The standards of the world are changing every day. Every day there is a new thing that the world is doing. But if you are able to stick through with the word of God and build your character based on the word of God, you will have a very strong character, and it will make your personality shine through much more strongly. The last thing that I want to talk about is your behavior. So your behaviors are the actions you take based on your thoughts, emotions, traits, values, and circumstances. Your behaviors are the visible footprint, what others actually see you doing, right? So your behaviors are the things you do. Like, let's say, I'm gonna drink some water. Now, that is my behavior. What you can see. It is not my moral compass. It is what I do. It is what I do that you can see. Behaviors are observable and changeable. They are influenced by mood, environment, and habits. You can learn and unlearn behaviors. Now, being talkative in a group is a behavior. It might come from a trait, which is extroversion. It might also come from a mood, which is excitement. And it can also come as a strategy or from a strategy, which is trying to fit in. So your behaviors are basically the actions that you take. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's who you truly are. It's just the action that you take. You can have a kind person who, for some reason, based on circumstance, can be unkind in the moment, but that's not who they are. That's the behavior they put up at a particular point in time. It may be that naturally they are more kind, but based on the circumstance or so, they showed up with the behavior that is unlike them. Have you ever, said that before? That's so unlike her, because their traits. That, their dominant trait is that they're a kind person, but suddenly they are showing up in a way that you can't seem to recognize because they put up a behavior that is inconsistent with their traits, right? So your behavior is the actions that you take. They are the responses that you have to the circumstances and the moods and the, conditions that you find yourself in. They are the actions that you take. They may not necessarily be a good reflection of who you truly are. Some people can behave contrary to their actual personality. Some people can behave differently from who they actually are, and in such a case, we would say that they're not being authentic. We would say that the person is not being authentic if their behavior is not aligned with their character. And when I say behavior and character, your behavior is the action you're taking. Your character are the lens, the values, the things that inspire your actions. If your behaviors are contrary to your character, you will have a lot of cognitive dissonance. You will always be in a place of unrest in your mind because you believe one thing but you're acting a different way. Maybe just because you're trying to fit in. Have you ever had a group of friends that believed in one thing that you didn't believe in, but then because you wanted to be accepted by them, you were acting a particular type of way so that they would accept you? Yes, that is exactly what it looks like to have a behavior that is contrary to your character. Okay, so now that we're done with the elements of your personality, I hope that we understand, how the various elements come together to shape our personality and make us the person that we are. So we're going to go on ahead and take the elements one by one and dive a little deeper into them and see how best we can use them or how we can appropriate them to carve out, how we want to show up in the world.